Welcome to the Victoria Rumble Room, the show that looks at issues on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and the worldwide universe. And speaking of the worldwide, ever-expanding universe, across town in his lair is jilting John Juricic, the Croatian sensation. Hi, John.
Robin, how are you? This weather, man, this gorgeous weather we're having this summer. It's just extraordinary. And it reminds me of my old water polo days at UVic, and how I enjoyed the water and how I enjoyed the summer. But these days, when it's like this, and at my age, arguably at my weight, about the only thing I'm interested in is the ice in my glass at about 5 p.m.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful image, John. And actually, I'm sure it's shared by many of our viewers.
Right.
And, this summer weather, it makes you think about travel. And now we can travel within the province. People can finally come over from the mainland. Apparently, the numbers are slowly creeping up on the ferries and more people are coming to Victoria. I've been out on the streets in downtown Victoria. It does seem busier, and that's good news. And we're going to be talking to John Wilson very shortly, who is the chairman of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. He is also the CEO of Wilson Transport. And Wilson Transportation, of course, a big operator in town. They do the hop-on, hop-off buses. They're up a little bit, I think 10 to 20%. They have trips also that go across to Victoria and Vancouver. They're the connector bus now, and it's started. It's still moderate, but it's started. Really looking forward to what John has to say. I understand he is cautiously optimistic about the summer.
John and I go back a ways. As we know, we're all three of us are the Chamber alumni. He's not alumni; he's still active. And back in the mid 2000s, when I was chair, John was on the board, and outstanding individual, ran a great business, and truly had, as all tourism related businesses have done, has taken a real hit. And so I can't wait to hear from him about how he's struggled, but conversely, how they could survive in a post-circuit breaker environment. But also very exciting to hear is that we have Howie Siegel from Pagliacci's restaurant here to talk about the recovery and also why PAGS has been so successful for 42 years. Howie's a great entertainer. He's a media personality, but he's also an extraordinary business person. And so can't wait to listen to Howie and how he's been doing. Howie and how he's been doing. Hey, little twist on words. And so here's a little Howie Siegel preview for y'all.
Years. You look great. You don't change much, do you? I got bald. I got bald, Howie.
So who says the restaurant business is always easy, eh?
Oh. Yeah. Well, someone's got to put the foosball tables together. Yeah. If I was as tall as you, I'd be Premier of British Columbia.
You want to be the Premier of British Columbia?
No, but if I was as tall as you, I could get elected.
You think so?
Well, they don't elect dwarfs in this province.
I thought maybe you were going to do a Pat Paulson,
Oh,
If
yeah.
nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
I thought that was Calvin Coolidge.
I can hardly wait to get Howie Siegel on the Rumble Room. The guy is just so colorful, so much fun, and so successful. And it's great to talk to Howie about how he sees things shaping up in downtown Victoria this summer for his business and for others. I also wanted to just quickly address the fact that there's been a few feathers ruffled about a position we took on this show last week about passports, about vaccine passports. Certainly, they're necessary internationally. I'm really hoping that we can open up that border, and I'm hoping we get to that because we've got to get our tourism doors open again for the sake of businesses here. But I also talked about the fact that I thought it was a good idea for us to have vaccines locally. Businesses then could be assured that people that haven't been vaccinated can't come in and expose people to COVID-19. Now, this may not be an issue long term because we're going to have herd immunity before you know it. We're going to get over 80% of Canadians that will have the inoculation and will be protected that way. But I think in the short term, it would give people a peace of mind. And that was just a position I thought was reasonable to take. Some people don't like it. They say it's against Canada being a free country, an open country where people can do as they please. And I say, if you live in a country and it's a country of laws, you need to respect those laws. You also, I mean, if you decide you don't want to have a vaccine, fine, but that doesn't give you the right to expose other people to your decision. So that's my position on that, Johnny.
Yeah, we did get some of our first trolling on that, what we're going to now be introducing more frequently, which is the Victoria Rumble Room rants. And your position on the vaccine passport, did ruffle a few feathers. But I fully support your position. The reference to the opening of the border, that's a big issue, you know. This is all going as planned. I think we're all getting vaccinated. As you suggested, we're all getting towards that magic 80% number. But really, until we get foreign visitors, our tourism economy is in first gear. And so July 21st, that's going to be a big day for a large part of the Greater Victoria regional economy, if not all of the Canadian economy. But also, Robin, this was a week where we marked a National Indigenous Peoples Day within National Indigenous History Month. Wow, what an emotional month. What a challenging, puzzling month, how to react to all these major announcements and reconciliation. In the Rumble Room, we've been promoting the interest of our First Nations, and we've asked others to do the same. But I think that we can still honor and support our First Nations and the Canada's birthday at the same time. And you can be certain that I'll be waving a flag on July 1st.
Well, I will too, John. And, I actually don't have a big issue with what Victoria Council has done in terms of canceling a TV show celebrating Canada Day. First Nations didn't want to participate in it. Council voted unanimously not to do the TV show. Well, fair enough. It was not going to be a big July 1st in Victoria. There wasn't going to be a giant party downtown with bands and music. There wasn't going to be fireworks. We're still coming out of a COVID pandemic, and it was going to be low key anyway. So I say, fine, let's do something where we can still reflect on our First Nations, but not lose the importance of Canada Day. Our First Nations people are Canadians too. I think we have a lot still to celebrate. We shouldn't lose sight, though, of things that are a problem for this country. We can think about both sides of the coin. For example, Canada isn't perfect. We have all these people that were in our tents, in parks, all over Greater Victoria. And we have now finally housed them, but just putting them in a shelter is not solving the problem. We've still got to do something about helping people that have barriers, helping people with addictions, and even doing something about the criminal population. It's going to cost money, but we've got to fix the situation. But I think Canadians believe we should, and that speaks well of Canada. I also think we need to do something about housing in general. Where are our young people going to live in the next generation with all these $1 million plus homes? I think we're really facing a crisis in the future if we don't take a second look of how we're going forward with our housing, and keeping in mind that, we're not necessarily always going to have these very low interest rates. In fact, interest rates, they're saying, could go up in the next year or so. If they go up with so many people borrowing right on margin, People are going to lose their homes. We could be facing a huge crisis. Again, Canada needs to look at this, and I believe Canadians will, and that also speaks well of the country. Don't keep our heads in the sand could be the motto underneath the flag or underneath the national emblem. We are a nation that truly cares about its citizenry. We don't always do it perfectly, but I believe there's a real sincere effort to do that. And we really care about getting together in the face of a crisis. Look how Canadians have responded to COVID-19. We're leading the whole world per capita in first shots with vaccines. By the end of the summer, most Canadians will have 2 vaccines. And people have not complained that much during this crisis. They have worn their masks. They have socially distanced. They have really cut down travel. They haven't had people over. Canadians have really rallied around this, and even our governments haven't fought that much. There's always sparks, but I think Canadians can be really, really proud about the way we've handled a terrible worldwide crisis. We're not out of it yet, but I think we've done a pretty good job in this country. So there is lots to celebrate, John, and I'll be doing just that on July 1st, waving my maple leaf.
Well said, Robin. Beautifully articulated. Go Canada, go. Now, hard to, but we have a show to run. So let's turn to our first guest in the Rumble Room. John Wilson is chair of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce and also CEO of Wilson Transportation. Business is already starting to pick up as Wilson's BC Ferry Connector service has restarted. It's a smaller bus to start, but it's somewhere. And its bus to Tofino is also back on the road. So I'm really pleased to hear about that. We got to start somewhere on the ladder to recovery. The circuit breaker is over, and now it's the dashboard to get people back into Victoria shops and restaurants. Let's zoom John in and hear about how things are going.
And joining us now in the Victoria Rumble Room, which we sometimes think of also as the Greater Victoria Chamber Old Boys Club, but we decided we'd stick with Rumble Room, is the current chair of the Victoria Chamber, and that is John Wilson. Great to have you on the show, John.
Great to be here, Robin and John. Thanks very much for having me. I didn't know I'd gotten so old. I'm part of the Old Boys Club now, but that's good to know.
You have a youthful demeanor, and we appreciate that. But
That's right.
I don't know how you're doing it. John and I have both been chairs, but we certainly weren't chairs in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah.
I mean, this has just been crazy. This pandemic has been so hard on business, particularly on hospitality and tourism, but business in general, and all kinds of industries affected. Are you starting to see light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I think we are. There's many times in this tunnel you don't know whether that light is the end of it or a train coming at you. But we think it's the end of it now, and definitely our sales team and our operations team are gearing up. We have this big FIBA tournament, coming up at the end of June, which is exciting, and for our team here at Wilson's and for the community. And we think it is on its way back. We're just a little concerned about how quickly it will come back. Ironically enough, if it comes back too quickly, a lot of us in tourism and hospitality could be going out of one stress into another as far as staffing issues are concerned. It's been a long time. This whole pandemic, if you will, hit the tourism and hospitality industry probably the first and the hardest, and will be the last to recover. We're looking at 18 months in now. We started getting cancellations in late January. So it's been a long time, and we certainly, we're down from 200 plus staff down to about 40, and to get back up there is going to take a long time as well. But we're excited about the future, and hopefully it comes soon as well for everybody else.
Hey, John, that's quite a hit. So, folks know you as a transportation company, and I'd like to hear how that's been impacted during these challenging times. Is it been as challenging, difficult as the hospitality and tourism side? Potentially not. But I think a lot of folks also don't know that you run many sports teams. and would love to hear about that side of the business. I think we know the answer, but how is that coming? What's the future for those teams?
The future's bright for sure. The leagues have done a good job. So the VIJHL with the Vancouver Island Junior League with the Peninsula Panthers, they basically, for all intents and purposes, shut down last year. They changed their model earlier pre-pandemic to a pay-to-play model, which is the future of really junior hockey. The Victoria Grizzlies and the BC Hockey League, very much the same. They went to a more of a pay-to-play model, and that league has had a very successful mini tournament, if you will, or mini bubble up in Port Alberni that was very successful, and is looking has just announced today, actually, or yesterday, their 54 game schedule for 2021-22 season. The West Coast Baseball League, the Victoria Harbor Cats, and our new franchise in Nanaimo, the Nanaimo Night Owls, who actually haven't played a game yet. Unfortunately, we announced the Night Owls about 2 weeks prior to the pandemic being shut down the league. We've gone now 2 years without a league. That's last year there was no league at all. This year there is the West Coast Baseball League, but only the American teams are playing, not the Canadian teams. So all the teams have weathered through, if you will, but it's definitely going to be a new day in sports, the business of sports, around sponsorships and how many people are going to feel comfortable going back into arenas with large groups of people. So it'd be interesting to see what post-pandemic sports, business of sport will be.
What a back to the future moment, because Robin used to be a sports broadcaster many months. So not only do we have the old Chambers boys, we have old sports broadcasting times here.
We cover a lot of old on this show.
Right.
I have to say, you mentioned the border, John, and I was just thinking we'll be able to watch out at Juan de Fuca Strait here pretty soon and see all those cruise ships sailing by Victoria on their way directly to Alaska. I understand the business is pretty brisk in Seattle right now for people that want to get out of Dodge and go up and see Alaska. So the border stays closed. It stays closed through the summer. We don't really have a date yet when that border is going to open. It really affects so many things. It affects tourism in such a major way. And I know one of the things that was signed on by the Chamber Destinations Victoria, open letter to the government, to the provincial government, saying we want some clarity. And I have to imagine you must be talking to the Canadian Chamber, who you're hoping are talking to Justin Trudeau and saying, well, what about this border situation? Because of places like Victoria, which really depend on a free flow of people, if Americans have their double vaccination, why can't they come across the border?
Right. Well, one of the struggles we've had all along, Robin, is being with our advocating with the government, both from a industry level and from a chamber level, and what's become very clear, I guess, is that their lack of understanding how business works, and how business just doesn't turn on the lights in the morning and turn them off at the end of the day. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of work goes into an operation the size of Wilson's, of the cruise ships, of tourism operators, of restaurants and things like that. We saw when the circuit breaker was announced, lots of talk about food getting wasted and such. So, talking to the provincial government around during the circuit breaker about a plan. We need a plan, a recovery, a restart plan. They did a great job coming out and doing that once they found out from business, from tourism, that's what we need to be able to restart at our best capacity, and giving some time to know when we need to be good to go. And that's what we need to what we're trying to get across to the federal government around the border opening as well. As much as we'd love it open tomorrow, nobody's ready for it to be open tomorrow. It truly, and two of the big, we talk about the cruise ship industry, and it is big for our community, but two of the big companies that come into Victoria that bring a lot of American tourists are Clipper Navigation and Coho or Black Ball Ferry Lines. And both of them would not be able to fire up their engine and go tomorrow. They need some time to get staffed up, to get the boats ready, et cetera, et cetera. So that's, again, the planning part of this is so essential. I'm hoping that the governments of the day are starting to understand that better. We certainly see evidence of that in the provincial government. So we're hoping that the Prime Minister is feeling or hearing our voices from an advocate's perspective, and will do the same.
So, John, to wrap things up, I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing from you. I'm glad to hear that at least you folks are looking optimistically into the future. I hope some of the others that have been really hurting through the last, I'd say now 18 months are going to recover, I hope. Tell us what the future looks like in terms of the industry as a whole. And what are some of the long-term COVID impacts, like folks working at home, or do you see any kind of real societal changes that are going to impact the tourism and hospitality industry in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. I think the biggest concern is whether people want to come back and work in the industries, right? Are they too worried about when the next shoe is going to drop, when the next pandemic's going to hit, when the next 9/11 is going to happen? The unsure nature, status of our industry, and what has happened in the past, again, I call it 18 months, is make people a little more looking for more secure employment, shall we say, in their minds. So that's a big concern for sure. Definitely from a hospitality nature, I think from a restaurant, a lot of people have started doing the order and pickup, or DoorDash, etc. I think you're going to see a little more people eating in their backyard and drinking in their backyard instead of being at the bars or at the restaurants. Hopefully, it's not it doesn't diminish their business too much from that regard. So I see that changing. But from a tourism perspective, I always say that our secret weapon, secret sauce, if you will, in Victoria is Victoria. I mean, the pandemic didn't take away our city. It didn't take away how much people love our city. People love living here. People love visiting here. And I don't think that will ever change. And it will come back. We're very confident. Domestic travel will bring us enough to, well, hopefully enough to get most through the summer. But it's truly the international market that makes the tipping to make tourism back to where it was 2018-19 levels. We expect 2023 before we get to those levels again. But it's our job, as we've seen a lot of collaboration in the business, which is very heartwarming and very nice. I've been doing this 36 years now, born and raised in Victoria, seen a lot of people come and go in the industry. I can honestly say I've never felt more part of an industry working together as one as I do today. And so we've really done a great job under the leadership of Paul Nursey at Destination Greater Victoria, and people like Dave Cowan at Bouchard Gardens, Randy Wright at Harbour Air. We've really worked together to stand up for our industry, stand up for our community, and make sure that as many are left standing when this is all done. And I'm certainly excited to be part of this. I'm certainly excited to be able to look back and say, hey, we took a pounding, but we stood back up and we're still here. And I'm very proud of our team and our industry, and certainly our community, for making it through.
Man, it really gives me a lift hearing John Wilson sounding so positive about our business recovery from COVID-19, Robin, especially with regard to that other segment of our economy, which is all the business of sport activity that goes in and around the region, and that so many people are involved with. Let's hope the border opens sometime in July. We've referenced that earlier, and even more people fully vaccinated start to travel to Victoria, the island, across BC. Fingers crossed that we check off all of the boxes and have an open border later in the summer. And if they decide to come to Victoria, man, oh man, perhaps they'll check out Pagliacci's restaurant and meet one of Victoria's great local characters, Howie Siegel.
Howie Siegel is going to be in the room in a moment. And He's been an institution. He's been an institution in Victoria for decades. And for people who don't know Howie, this is a great time to meet him. Pagliacci's has been in operation for 42 years. Before that, Howie was actually a copywriter at CJVI. I think it was Daryl Dukes, who was the head of the Ku Klux Klan, was visiting Victoria, and how he stormed the radio sound booth, and it was just a wild scene. Howie's always been so impassioned since he came to Canada many years ago. He's a native New Yorker who moved to Los Angeles as a young man and has been in Canada most of his adult life. He also, after taking over PAGS, moved into media. He ran a show on cable, and then he was the entertainment reporter on Czech TV for a while. He was a talk show host on AM 900. He's even been an actor on stage. He was in the musical Bears that was created by composer Milton Carmen, and was colorful at that. He's done a one-man play. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere. Let's zoom Howie in. And now, joining us in the Rumble Room, one of the more colorful guys you will ever see on any kind of format, television, radio, the World Wide Web, is Howie Siegel. And Howie, we go way back in radio, television, all sorts of things. And you've always been such a mensch, and you've always been so colorful. It's so great to have you on the show.
I have a performance gene, Robin. It's a birth defect. The camera comes on and I go nuts. People used to say, he's an egomaniac. Blame my parents. It's my genetic disposition. It's a birth defect. Have pity for me.
That's something.
Holy mackerel!
The pity aspect.
Show
It was
off.
the pity aspect.
No, I'm not showing off. I'm merely following destiny and my nature. I'm like an animal in the forest. I start to talk and make jokes and be funny and provocative. You know what a poet once said? He can't enter a room without changing every molecule. And
That's what you do. That's what you do.
when I'm really hot.
Holy mackerel. I am so honored to have met you. This is the first time I've met you. I've seen you on radio. I've seen you on TV. I've seen you everywhere.
He looks really good on radio.
John,
But such not only entertainer, institution, personnel, business person. And I think that's what I'm going to ask you about right now. People who have lived in Victoria have known you everyone knows you. Maybe the younger folks don't, so we're going to change that. You and your brother David, however, have made Pagliacci's a landmark eatery. You own Pagliacci's. You started Pagliacci's. It's an institution down there.
I've been institutionalized. It's true. People.
But in terms of business, okay, in terms of business and hospitality, the last year has been like a friggin' death knell for a company. These poor restaurants, more poor people in them, trying to keep them going. But you guys continue to keep going. You continue to be successful. People still come down. What the hell? What is your secret? 40 years going strong. Tell us what's going on. How come you are different than the others?
It's clear it's my looks. Everybody knows that. I'm adorable.
That was an invitation. I just laid it out there.
What is the secret? Delicious food. That's the secret. Because me, as funny as I am, and as terrific as the waitresses, tuchusses, I'm not allowed in. I'll probably be arrested for saying that now.
Yeah, we'll blank you out somehow. I'll figure it out.
Everything is. It really is the only art form in the restaurant is the food. That's the only thing that's really tough about the business. The food. Give me flavorful food. Give me a chef that can make food flavorful, and you have an artist, and that's a rare thing in life, and that's really the secret. It's great food. And the rest of the stuff helps, of course, pricing, sizing, service, nice people. I mean, there's nothing worse than getting a verbissin or a bitter person serving you food at the crux of the restaurant business is your mother bringing you food, your mom, a beautiful female smiling and loving you and feeding you. That's what we're all brought up on. And that's what we go back to, I think, at the core of the restaurant business is somebody loving you and bringing you food. And that's really what we're alluding to.
And really, Howie, in many ways, it's been the food, but it's also been the support of locals. This is a community that relies so much on tourism for so many of our restaurants and hotels. But Pagliacci's thrives year round.
Well, we never advertised, I'll tell you that much. I've despised advertising so long that the mute on my remote control used to get worn off from hitting mute. Every time a commercial came on, I wore off that little sign on my remote control. And I brought that feeling to Pags. There's no signs at Pagliacci's. There's not a Visa sign. Never has been. There are no signs. There are no tent cards saying only $19.95. There are no advertising costas saying drink this. I eliminated all that stuff. I couldn't stand it. I wanted an experience as close to my mother bringing me food and as close as your mother bringing you food as I could get. Now, admittedly, my mother never brought me a check after she fed me, but I'm going to bring you a check. So it's not an exact duplicate of your family experience, but it's as close as we could make it.
But to John's question, and I guess to mine as well, and besides your mother, it's the legacy also. You've got Solomon, your son, is now the manager of Pagliacci's. He's done some innovative things in this past year during the pandemic that have made a big difference, working with the city, opening up the street. Maybe you could touch on that, because that, I think, is something the city has done right downtown, is allowing restaurants to move outside.
I couldn't agree with you more. I said that I was going to apologize to the mayor next time I saw her, because I had maligned her when she first introduced all these new ideas. And I was appalled that we're losing all this parking space. I feel for all the restaurants that don't have outside seating. I mean, they are the ones that have really, really suffered. And it is, as John said, a horrible period in the restaurant business, certainly the worst that I've ever experienced. But my son is a savior and a genius. He's taken what I gave him, which I'm not depreciating, but he has elevated us in the drinks, in the food. He's put us into another class, not to mention the whole digital makeover of the restaurant. He's absolutely in tune with the new world, and he talks to the bureaucrats. He talks to the politicians. That was a facility that I was never capable of. I was lucky that my brother David, while he was alive, was able to talk to adults and make jokes every time, and David has a facility, Solomon has that facility. And we learned as hippies that sometimes bad things come out of good things come out of bad situations. I think this is a perfect example of a good thing, the closing off Broad Street and giving us a giant sun deck, which is something I was so envious of for so many years. Other restaurants that enjoyed that we never had.
So Howie, building on this, okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I'm looking for it. It's somewhere.
Robin hasn't gained that much weight.
Okay. I listen to a certain radio station in the morning while I'm doing my stuff. Sounds like downtown Victoria is downtown Lebanon. Like, what's really going on with safety? It can't be that worse than it has been over the past 20 years. To give us some sense of that, relative to what's being sort of described in other places.
I want to be fair about this. I've watched it grow my 42 years on Broad Street, downtown Victoria. I've watched it, and there's certainly been a deterioration. And the mass migration of people who don't have homes anymore. They used to live in slums. Forgive me, maybe some of the new viewers have never heard that word used before, but we used to have cheap real estate in every city in North America and in Victoria, included the other side of the tracks, where nice people didn't have to watch poor people live, where they could act out or where they could be drunk or intoxicated or loaded. And we don't have that anymore. Every inch of Victoria is
$1 million.
It's $1 million. Every square inch is $1 million. There are no more cheap housing where poor people can live, whether they're loaded or not, whether they're addicted or not. They still need to live somewhere. And of course, we know everybody's working on that solution, but we know the place for them is not in the streets, acting out their pathetic lives. I've seen things that are appalling. For me, they're appalling. And the idea that our children are going to have to witness that, that's just wrong. What they've done to the parks and what they've done to the public property, it's horrible. You know, my granddaughter said to me yesterday, protect me if we see a homeless person. I said, Sadie, this was last night.
Wow.
I said, Sadie, they're just like you and I. They just don't have any money. They don't have a place to be.
They're sick. They're sick.
Some of them are sick.
Hey.
Some of them are sick. Some of them are addicted. Some of them are mentally ill. Some of them are just poor. I don't know their story. I just know that I don't want that acted out on our streets. We have propriety. We have standards. We have a morality that we abide by. No, mine is looser than yours, perhaps, but I don't want a guy with his ass hanging out on the street shooting up in front of me.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it. I have a right not to see it.
Or in front of your customers. And I know that a lot of businesses
My grandchildren.
downtown, your grandchildren, but people are worried in businesses downtown that
Absolutely.
people won't come and shop. People won't come downtown. They're going to be afraid, right?
For years, they've been telling me that they've been going to the shopping centers where the parking is easy. They don't have to fight the parking. And now they don't have to fight, this tragic onslaught, this demi-monde that we're having to observe. We have a right to be protected from that. And you can't parade your pathetic life in front of me every time you have a whim to shoot up. I have a right to be protected from that.
Yeah. Okay.
We all do.
You've lived here for a long time. You've run a business here for at least relative to me or whatever.
42 years.
And
42 years ago at CFAX.
So probably the odd solution has passed through your thoughts. What are some really simple, basic things that you could advise certain councils to do or governments?
I wish I had those sorts of insights.
Okay.
I'm just a restaurateur, but I think that they're on the right track by starting to provide housing. The issues is where they put those hotels and locate poor people can become a slum and an instant slum. Yeah. I mean, it's complicated. I'm not pretending there are simple solutions. I'm not advocating death squads like they did in Brazil and other places and Philippines. We're a human rights country. We're a country with a soul and a conscience.
Right.
I certainly don't think in those terms. We have to take care of our human beings. They're part of the human family. But part of taking care of them is giving them a home where they can do their private things privately.
I don't know where that's all going to end, but I know where we're going to end. And we're going to end by saying everyone's got to go down to Pagliacci's on Bard Street. And we're going to try to have you on more often because this is so fun. Thank you, Howie, so much.
It was a pleasure to talk to you guys. It's just like being with my family, I can yell at you.
Man, we need to get Howie Siegel back here soon. That was fun. That was exciting, but also insightful into what's going on in downtown Victoria, what's going on in and amongst the hospitality industry. What a great guest. And talking about great guests, next week we have yet another power-packed Victoria Rumble Room show. Victoria Mayor Lisa Helps will be joining us. What do you think about that, Robin Adair?
Well, Lisa Helps is somebody that I know you've worked with closely, John. So I'm sure you'll have lots of questions to ask Lisa from a perspective of somebody who helped her along in her political start and has watched her, I'm sure, with close attention since she took the mayor's chair.
Yeah, you're right, Robin. I've been involved with Lisa's community developments for many years. And then she, of course, got busy as a city councilor and eventually city mayor. And my particular interest in her role in being mayor was around the economic development activities in the city. And those are questions that I'll be asking her next week. But as well as Mayor Helps, we're going to be talking about some developments and activities within the arts and culture community in our region with a focus on the Victoria Symphony.
That's right. We're going to have Matthew White, the CEO of the Victoria Symphony, joining us in the Rumble Room to talk about their restart, their relaunch this summer. It's on a smaller scale. There won't be a symphony splash, but there's lots planned. He's going to talk about how the arts are recovering in the middle of this pandemic. It's not easy, but they're doing it. And, Victoria is famous for the arts. It's important that we hang on to these institutions. It really forms us as a community. So Matthew White is going to talk about that. And I'm pumped that he's going to be on the show.
Yeah. And that allows us to support the symphony, allows us to see Lisa's views on different issues that might not be represented in the traditional media. And it allows everyone else and those two networks to support the show. And I thought I'd do something a little different as we start to, get out of these COVID restricted times. And so what do you think of the following? Let's see how that's captured on by our listeners. Hey, Robin, so I'm outside of the Victoria Rumble Room lair, and I think this video outside starts to represent that, in fact, we are getting outside of the house and hopefully things are getting better. And taking this opportunity to make sure you know how to share the show, and that being, of course, on our website, victoriarumbleroom.com. We'd all love you to like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Victoria Rumble Room. We have a Twitter account as well, which we're trying to use in as much as we can, that being at Victoria Rumble Room 1. And of course on YouTube, where we host all of our videos. We've been doing now for about 3 months at Victoria Rumble Room with Robin and John. And keeping with the spirit of the show, keeping with the spirit of the introduction, I am the Croatian sensation, and I am still John Juricic.
And I am basically Robin Adair, and rumble on.